Welcome to the Culturevating Leader podcast, a podcast for founders and people leaders who know that culture isn't written in policy. It's felt in every emotion your team experiences at work. I'm Sarah Dena, co-founder of The Culturevators and managing director of New Wave Learning. And in each episode of this podcast, I explore what it really means to be a cultivating leader. You'll hear stories, insights, and practical moves for turning emotion into a strategic lever for performance, loyalty, and growth. I'm excited. So let's get into it. In this episode, with my first ever guest, I'm back where the Culturevators actually began, in the Gel Studios office, with Gel's founder and managing director, Graeme Leighfield. Graeme is someone who refuses to follow the status quo. From a mistake that cost him his pride in his early career to building a sustainable, profitable, growing B Corp marketing agency, he shows how culture can be both deeply human and commercially smart. Our conversation spans a wide variety of topics, from the role of ethics in AI to why retention and belonging aren't soft and fluffy, they're actually strategic business levers. The Culturevators has been a beneficiary of the investment that Graeme talks about in this conversation, and our collaboration with Gel Studios is the ideal demonstration of the very thing I talk about, where values and culture aligns for good. I hope you enjoy our chat as much as I enjoyed hosting it. Welcome to the Cultivating Leader podcast with me, Sarah Dena. And I'm delighted to have this guest with me to launch and be part of the very first episode is an understatement. So, Graeme Leighfield, welcome to
Hello.
The first episode of the Cultivating Leader. So it's significant that both you and I are sat in the same office today, and that's your offices, Gel Studios, here in Swindon. And it's significant because this was really the start of the Cultivators' journey as a business. So yeah, it felt a little bit sentimental, some might say, but it felt very poignant to me to start here, have us both in the same building and record this first episode of the Cultivating Leader podcast. So thank you for allowing us to do that. For our listeners, Graeme, who don't know you, could you introduce yourself and Gel Studios and tell us how you hope it feels when someone works with you?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you ever so much for those kind words. They're very flattering, and I really appreciate it. My name's Graeme Leighfield, managing director, founder of Gel Studios. So we are, in essence, if I was going to give you a very, very short one-liner, we're a creative agency with purpose. And we believe that through the work that we do, we can inspire positive change through the medium of creativity. So we've been 12 years in business. We've got to make some lovely connections, this one included. And this is why it's lovely to be on here talking about something which is incredibly close to my heart, which is leadership around people with values. Ultimately, this is what made us click, because, we are very much from the same page. So if in terms of, the feelings, if we use the, the emotional culture deck, I've got 3 here for our conversation today.
Okay.
And I think they're also actually a little bit relevant to what you said, people that work with us, optimistic is the first one, because I think that always leaving a conversation and you're optimistic and positive is a really, really good thing to be. Supported, you've got the right people around you, you feel that you can achieve almost anything. So that's really, really important. And also rebellious. And this is something which I think we'll touch on a bit today. We're not one of the sort of businesses which just goes along with the status quo. We want to challenge it. We want to understand it. We want to be a little bit rebellious. So those are some cards which I've plucked out to start our conversation with today.
Brilliant. Thank you. So in the spirit of sharing, I did the same as well. And I often find it easier to start with the feeling that I am, but not necessarily want to be feeling, because once I've said it, it generally goes away. So I have selected the white card from the emotional culture deck, which is anxious. I am definitely starting out on this journey with some anxiety. The podcast space is very competitive. I know that there are people who do the same thing as me doing this very thing already, and I am trying to see them as aspirational rather than competitive. But my anxiety is high about just recording the first episode and getting it out there and seeing what the reaction is. However, I am also feeling black card proud to have decided to start not that long ago, if I'm honest, and proud to have been able to convert the vision into a plan and then execute on that plan in such a short time frame. So I'm certainly coming into this podcast feeling proud. So I'm curious, Graeme, to help our listeners understand a little bit more about the purpose, mission, and particularly values that you lead with at Jowl Studios. 12 years is a long time, and I'm sure that you have taken the business on a journey from kind of its original purpose, mission, values to the chapter of the organization today. So could you spend some time kind of exploring that with us, what your journey has looked like in terms of the purpose, mission, and values?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I started the business because, to be completely honest, I didn't feel like I could have any other option. So there was some stuff in my past where I felt that I would be unemployable. I had a career at Nationwide for 5 years, worked my way up quite high, and was in charge of disposing of old IT equipment. Turns out the things that I said that my team said that I could have, turned out that wasn't actually the case, and effectively I got in some trouble for that. And the reason why I'm sharing that is that I knew that I couldn't achieve what I really wanted to achieve on my own. I knew that if I was going to do it, it was going to have to be with the help of others. So it started off as me as a developer, and then we, started then doing design, and then we started doing marketing. Fast forward to where we are today, and we're a full service agency. But that approach about having experts in their respective fields was something that I knew was, very, very important. So when we look at obstacles to overcome, I've never managed a creative person before. I've never managed a marketeer before. Where we are at the moment, I've never managed a sales manager before. So I knew that being able to effectively communicate, understand, what employees wanted, needed, how they were to be supported was going to be, a really, really key point in us succeeding. And it was a lot of discovery. The discovery throughout the journey for many, many years came from quite simply what was in the gut, what felt right to do. And it was probably just before lockdown, we were made aware of like the B Corp movement. And when we went for the B Corp movement, I kind of used that as almost like a seal of approval, which is something that I've been sort of craving for many, many years because of my past, this approval, this kind of like wanting to belong. And when we got the B Corp status, that was like, wow, this is, what's been in my gut, my approach about how I've gone to managing people, the business, and, what we do in terms of giving back. Well, that's got a thumbs up from somewhere which is credible, right? So that was great. But out of all of the three pillars, so three main pillars, community, environment, but also people, it was the people one which really stood out to me. So when we group all of that stuff together, this kind of strong sense of wanting to, ultimately do something that my mum and dad are proud of because of what I went through in the past, coupled with, I'd like to think I've been relatively humble with regards to understanding that, I would not be here if it wasn't for the team. And putting into action things like the employee ownership scheme, it's actually a key thing. It's not my business, it's our business. And now we've got this fantastic reputation of obviously doing good in and around our local community, and that's where our vision statement comes from: inspiring change through creativity. And that's ultimately how we met, right?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget the meeting we had in this very room. You really challenged our thinking. Yeah. So definitely with the help of yourself and the team here at Jowl Studios, we are now fully open for business with paying clients and building a reputation around our delivery, which has become synonymous with the brand that you and the team have helped us to create. There's a couple of things that you shared there that I want to go back to. You and I at times have shared very openly different feelings about B Corp status. I'm wondering if now that you've had the validation, whether your feelings have changed about B Corp status at all.
Yeah, so I mean, it comes back to what was the intent. So the intent for me was that where can I get this approval from? And the B Corp was that kind of way in for me to get that approval. So people have been like, oh, so you've been great to employees since 2023, since you got the accreditation. No, we've been like that since day one. The thing about the B Corp stuff is it seems to be in a bit of a limbo state at the moment. And what I mean by that is you've got people which are using it as it's intended, as, you know, a framework to do better, which is great. But then you've also got people which are looking at it with the wrong angle, you know, as a marketing tool. When they look at what really matters, okay, ideal kind of customer profile, that we take looking after our people seriously. B Corp's had to evolve, and it's been under quite a lot of scrutiny for organizations which have obviously gone in to do it for the latter as a marketing tool and then been kind of, you know, stumped up. We're committed to what it stands for. It might not be perfect, but it's certainly one of the best ones that's out there. The other one I have looked at is investors and people. Investors have been around for a very, very long time. And that's one which is focused, as I said earlier, on that core pillar, which is people, investors and people, because they've got a massive section now about why investors and people is different to B Corp. In summary, I think it's a great kind of, like, from personal experience, a tick in the box that, you know, you're managing something which has got the capability to do impact, you know, and I think that's a really, really great thing to do.
Yeah, nice. For our listeners, Graeme, can you, connecting this, I guess, with the fact that you are hiring new people into the organisation is in a strategic chapter of growth. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through a lot of change in the past year, and, you know, being honest, this idea of making decisions from the heart has sometimes got me in some situations. So we had to make our first round of redundancies last year. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through. But we had to look at it in terms of, okay, how can we make ourselves a sustainable, profitable business? Because if we're not sustainable and we're not profitable, we can't be reliable to our customers or our clients.
Yep.
So doing that change forced me to rethink things in a really, really big way. We have very much shifted into a a profitable, sustainable model, which is honoring our 5-year plan, which is what I set out to do. We are growing really, really well, but the key is to obviously not only attract the best talent, but equally to retain the best talents. As I started off on the podcast earlier, I mentioned to you, you know, I have no experience of managing people in their relevant sectors, let alone people that are experienced in their sectors. We're bringing in people now that have been in the game for, you know, 10, 15 years. That they are good at what they do. Least thing they need is, you know, somebody that's going to be micromanaging them and other bits like that. So this is where this kind of like self-managing culture, peace, ownership, coupled with things like the PQ framework and other tools like the emotional culture deck, where we can express ourselves in a respectful but open way. So very important.
Yeah. So one of the best leaders I ever had the privilege of working for, his name's Nigel Crabb. He instilled in me really early on this idea that you're talking about here, which is servant leadership. So there are lots of different styles and lots of different leadership development books you can find about all different ways of leading. And the idea behind it was that you are serving, you build a team of people who are better at the things that they do than you are. Because as a leader, you don't need to have all of the answers, but what you do need to be able to do is to serve the people that do have the answers in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a style of leadership that has certainly served me well, and I would say is the kind of foundation for what I mean when I talk about the cultivating leader. And I'll ask you about that a little bit later on. Another thing I'm going to ask you about a bit later on is leadership lessons. But I just want to come back to this point around your values, and not your personal values, but your company and brand values. And in this chapter of growth that you've just described to us, which of the values do you feel right now is most alive in the chapter that Gel Studios finds itself in today?
So one of them is explore. So
Okay.
The ability to explore a solution with a customer at a much deeper level than first thought. So, you know, again, in our industry, we get a lot of people which come in and they say, oh, I've seen this, I've seen that, I want this, I want that. And what they don't understand is the depth to it. So the almost like a subconscious permission to explore and not just do that internally, but to kind of do that with clients as well. And it's when you exhibit those kind of behaviors and you ask those questions with an understanding of where they're trying to go, their goals, then you get that status of obviously trusted partner with them. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of my team at the moment. Now, this is what's fundamental to our recruitment policy about hiring experts, because we have obviously a great approach to obviously bringing people on straight from university and teaching them, the skills about what it's like to actually, truly communicate. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it before. They say, the most important skills to be able to communicate, but not very many people actually can communicate at a meaningful level. So what does the explore mean for us as a business? Well, it's a direct link to that keeping a profitable and sustainable business. We're scoping and doing the right things. These things are making impact. They are delivering results, which then provides with ongoing relationships and recurring revenue. So the explore is definitely a big one. Probably a very close second would be the empathy one. Yeah. So as we all know, with probably the past 12 months of economic change in this country, we are having conversations with clients about that are rightfully guarded about their budgets and equally confused about the marketing and design space, because we've got AI and other things that are painting messages that I believe aren't sustainable at all in the long term because they're so output focused. So yeah, definitely the explore, and empathy is one that we use all day, every day. So that's certainly a very, very strong one in all elements that we do.
So let me ask you, how do you feel about AI as a leader of a creative business?
So great question. It's one that I get asked a lot. And normally it's like, why should I pay your agency to do this versus AI that can do it in 5 minutes? And the easiest way that I can explain it is that AI is focused on output only. And what you will see if anybody wants to try and really make the best about AI, it's all about the prompts that you put in and what are the pieces of information, right? So if you're putting in pieces of information which are biased, copied, haven't had any kind of due diligence done on them, then you're going to get output based on those variables. It's only as good as the stuff that you put in. So we embrace AI for the stuff that AI was, I believe, designed to do. Do the research for us based upon this criteria, do this and do that. And obviously we've seen efficiencies and things like that raising. My concern is that when you look at any service-based business which is leveraging on AI to do the work of what people are needed, and they've made layoffs and they're saving costs because they've gone to an AI, it is what I believe the start of a downward spiral. Why? I touched on it earlier. If you're creating things, doing things that are providing little to no return on investment, and you're correctly measuring these things, well, when it comes to have those tough chats and those tough conversations, where's the expertise? The expertise is not there anymore. All that is there is AI, which is asking for the knowledge to come in through the prompts to give you something which is meaningful. So I understand the lure of it, again, with what this country's been through, certainly in the past 12, 18 months, this idea that AI can replace 3 or 4 people in your business and all this and all that. And that's a short-term game. But as I said, we like to think longer term. As I said, we've got this 5-year plan. AI has a part of it, but not in the way that it is certainly marketed and probably profiteered from in some organizations at the moment. Hopefully that answers that. And I think that is actually applicable to any service-based industry, really, whether it's coaching, training, legal, certainly design. Ours is probably one of the biggest ones. But expertise comes from the path that you've walked and the context that you can draw upon.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I've also seen you embrace it in a very joyful, playful way. So when I showed you my caricature image for the logo of the Culturevating Leader podcast, you were the first person to say, if I give you a picture of me, can you create one?
Yeah, totally. Great idea, right? Great idea.
It has its place, right? It has its place.
But you asked AI how to create you a marketing strategy about how to share it around everywhere, and it'll probably give you something quite vanilla. That's where, again, if you've got the assets, again, output, it's a great output. Okay. How are you using it? And that's the thing which we look at with regards to the line we toe in a creative agency. We're highly creative, but equally we understand that everything's got to be paid for. Everything's got to pay for itself in some way. So yeah.
I agree with you, but I think, and I say this confidently, having worked with you and your agency, is that there is an ethical element to your adoption and implementation of AI as well. I know from, my personal experience 2 years ago, if somebody had said to me, you're going to be using ChatGPT pretty much every day to help you with some process in your business or another, or you're going to be using it as a thinking partner for design of learning programs and writing material and so on and so forth, I would have laughed and said, you've got to be joking. You can't do that. You can't recreate. I'm an authentic person. I hold that value really strongly. You can't do that in AI. I invested in and I immersed myself in AI learning a year ago. And the biggest takeaway from that, and my biggest commitment as a result of that, is that the bedrock of successful AI is how ethical you are in your use of it. And that means how honest and transparent you are with your clients about how you're using it and what you're using it for. That's had some knock-on effects for me. I've been able to increase prices because people know that I use AI and therefore they're not going to pay for as much design time in our learning programs anymore. I get it. It's a consequence. But there are other ways that it's allowing me to work more effectively. And it all comes down to your ethics on AI implementation and adoption, as far as I'm concerned.
The biggest thing about AI is it was compared to when we brought in tractors and farmyard tools. People were like, oh, we're going to lose our jobs. We're going to lose everything. That's not it at all. What it means is that we're going to have to upskill what we do, and we're going to upskill into a very, very specific area. Why? Because the legwork can be done by AI. That's fine. That's cool. That's great. That's what it's meant for. Everybody will be better for it because we're able to spend our time investing in those things, which makes our individual product offering better, which makes the thinking behind the scenes deeper or more meaningful or better ROI. That stuff will all happen. But you're right. It does all come back to the here and now. Ethically, how are they doing it? In our industry, there are loads of people. You know that stuff's made in AI. You just know it is. And yeah, it pulls at my heartstrings sometimes, right? We deal with a lot of people that come in here and they've paid a lot of money and they've not got very much for it, all while someone somewhere has profited off of that, mainly because they've used the AI stuff,
Yeah.
Our approach is very different to that at all. Use it where it's intended and do good off the back of it.
Brilliant. I want to spend some time getting into your long-term strategy. And I think you said your 5-year business plan.
Yep.
So I'm really curious to know how the culture at Gel Studios, what role you see it playing in enabling your business strategy, with a particular focus on how you're measuring that.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the culture comes down to two things. Well, three things actually: finding talent, retaining talent, and job satisfaction. So when we look at what we do, we operate, obviously there is a structure. We've explored, flat organization structures. There just has to be for a team of like 11, 12 people. But when we're finding, people are like, well, why would I, go to some sort of C-suite level role or come to some sort of growing smaller thing? Well, you can be who you are and be celebrated for that. Self-motivated, everything is transparent, you can really make an impact here. So that's a massive culture piece there. Retaining talent, nobody likes to be micromanaged. We heard yesterday from a key client that they're leaving because their manager doesn't give them any respect, constantly cutting their budgets even though they're delivering stuff time after time. And it is just like, the saddest thing is, I've heard this before, and it's not good. And why they're losing a great person because of that. Is that because it's older, mentality, this, do as I say, not as I do kind of thing? I don't know. So that also feeds into obviously job satisfaction piece as well. But, the easiest way to look at this is finding a new employee. Let's just say you're paying somebody a £50,000 salary. You're looking at probably £7,500 to find that person if you were to use a recruitment agency. Then if you look at productivity, you're probably looking at maybe a 6 weeks worth of productivity, which wouldn't be, where it needs to be because they're being onboarded, not to mention all the risks. So being conservative, I'd say that's at least £12,000, £15,000 worth of resource. If you took that 12, 15,000 pounds of resource and you turned that into, here's some hours which you can spend whenever you want, as long as it's doing some good stuff in the local community. Here's some stuff that you can do by going and volunteering. Here is some cash for you to go and put on whatever training course you want to go on. After year one, you've already broken even on that, because recruitment costs are going to happen if you're in a constant growing state. I would much rather do that and keep people in the business than I would go through that constant churn, constant upset, constant risk. And that's just one metric for what a culture piece can do. Then this is now when we've gone even further. So as I said, we are targeting people now that would be technically looking at like C-suite roles. We are earing people up to come in at director level roles for when the business is either acquired or sold. This is where the employee ownership thing comes in. This is me actually putting a line in the sand to say, right, 30% of this business is available for staff present and future. And then to further say that this is going to happen, this is where the 5-year plan comes in. We will be selling this business in 5 years' time, whether it's acquired or whether it's a management buyout. But we see so many schemes, so many culture pieces, coffee and beanbags, all that kind of stuff, that we've spoken about. It doesn't mean anything, or apprenticeship schemes don't mean anything until the business is sold. Well, this is where we're bucking the trend and we're doing it differently. So, hopefully that kind of explains those 3 key areas and my views on it about at a very top level about a financial investment for it. The easiest one for any business is just to look at what is your staff churn, what's your retention rate, and how much it actually costs to get somebody up to speed, and all the rest of the team which have to come in to obviously pick up the slack, help with the new training and other stuff as well. And those numbers, even when you're conservative, I've just done it for one employee on a modest salary, it's quite alarming. It just makes good business sense.
I think there's something so refreshing about knowing that there is investment being made into individuals that they are in control of. So from my L&D experience, there was so much command and control over the learning and development budget, for example.
Yep.
Who's getting it? How much are they getting it? Is it fair and consistent? Is it across the, key disciplines that we want to do? But just hearing you talk about a workplace culture existing where you can have control over how that money is spent. And it might not be on your development necessarily. It may be in helping a cause progress their strategic direction in the way that you did with us. That's the future of work right there, I think. Removing the command and control that is stifling so much of our innovation and creativity when it comes to creating what I call healthy, not just happy workplaces.
Yeah, 100%. Putting that control back to the team is one thing, and telling somebody that they need to, spend some time working on some good stuff and it's not billable is one thing. Members of the team coming and saying to the collective, I saw this at the weekend. They could really do with our help. What do you think? And then the team say, yeah, we should do something.
That's amazing.
That's where it's at. And this is where now I'm very rarely involved with saying where we're going to spend hours and where we're going to spend resource. The honest reason is I give away far too much. What I did is I told the team that, look, we will always have this commitment for doing good. We always will. But it needs to be a collective thing. Why? It shouldn't be another thing where it's like, oh, Graham's just given a free website or something over to these people. It should be we collectively have said this because it's either important to this member of the team or it aligns with that. And again, the together piece works really well. And that's another key thing for us. We know we've got the right people in the room doing those jobs when they're coming up with those ideas. And, then we see the impact and it just, blossoms out.
I'll often be heard saying to clients that I'm working with that culture is actually defined by what's happening when the boss is out of the room. It's the everyday practices that are happening amongst a team of people, and they're not directed, they're not monitored and managed. They live and breathe. And I guess I'm curious from your perspective, both as a creative agency and a leader yourself, what signals to you if a business is truly living its brand values? What signals do you look for?
The honesty piece is 100% what we look for. So if we can have a conversation with a client, whether they're a long-standing client or a new client, and we ask some of those tough questions, and they're honest, and they come back to, and they respond, that is a way where we know that it's being led by somebody that's got the right intentions. That's the greatest way. Normally, when we're speaking to people, we will see senior management, director, owner, founder chats. That's kind of like the level that we're at. I said at the very beginning about this wanting to like belong and get approval. When you're in a room with some people and they're like, actually, I'm trying to do what's right, it's really, really hard. And then you're in a room with somebody else. I'm like, yeah, I get you. I understand it. That's what we're trying here. Where you kind of have that kind of like connection straight away.
There's a vulnerability there as well, Graeme, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%.
Creating the conditions for someone to be honest allows them to feel vulnerable and share that with you, and that just then generates more honesty.
And this is one of the reasons in hindsight the office, I believe, is such a big success for us, because you can get those kind of like that feeling much quicker when you're in somebody's space. When you're sitting across the room from somebody, as opposed to a chat through a web browser. I think it's more sincere. You pick up on body language, you pick up on all the signals that we as humans have been learning to read for hundreds of thousands of years, right? So that's one really good way to see if the leadership is kind of like on point. In terms of understanding whether they're living and breathing their values. That's actually quite a tough one, because we are a creative agency, but we go deeper when it comes to things like brand exploration, messaging exploration. So normally we get people in, there's a lot of disconnect. So you've got an MD over here who may be an MD founder for 20 years, and then you've got, he's got a senior management team which is now in. They're all new. They all have their agendas. They want to do great work, prove themselves, and all that other stuff. And you get this constant like disconnect. So some of the work that we do is we can define some of those values by means of, what does their logo actually mean? How can we translate this into actionable things? So we kind of don't really get too involved with the actual, okay, are they living and breathing their values? And this was why when the Culturevators came along, to me, it felt like, well, if there's a strategic collaboration piece there, it really should be with these guys, because we can create the brands, we can create the messaging, we can create the assets which are used in marketing and sales. But actually, do we have enough experience to actually take those things and put them into actionable plans inside of an organization? That, I believe, is outside of our remit. But there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't collaborate with somebody or an organization who can actually help this organization take it further. And this is what's obviously we've had the fortunate thing of working with a few people doing exactly that.
Absolutely.
It's understanding at that top level, are they up for it? I think that's probably the easiest way of doing it. And that honesty, that ability to share, breaking down those walls either after a couple of meetings or sessions or whatever, that's the key thing. Those are feelings you get in your gut. Is this person actually, are they genuine, or are they full of?
That's the word that was going through my head. Are they genuine?
But there's a lot of that in business, isn't there? People that are outwardly saying, "Oh, I've done this and I've done that," and that really is not my style at all. That's not my style, because it doesn't feel right. People say that. So you've got to kind of sift through that to get to it. But
a lot of times the work that we do is thrown into the bucket of, oh, that's too soft, it's too woolly, it's too, it's too out there. Oh, I don't really want people talking about their feelings at work. And that's a barrier that we come up against time and time again. And so to help us with that, we really talk about the work we do is actually all action oriented. It's all about solving the problem through actions. And we talk a lot in the Culturevators about habits and rituals. Because those are the things that create the momentum and that everyday practice of the things that you're doing when you're not necessarily being watched or monitored. So I guess to bring this section of our talks to a conclusion, when thinking about your brand values and your internal culture, are there any particular habits and rituals that you've established for Gel Studios that help you keep those values and your culture aligned?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, we've got things which are, us. So we've got the Lego wall. The Lego wall is effectively a way where people can, they join, pick a bit of Lego. We don't say whose it is. Over time, we figure out, clients figure out whose it is. We make sure that, when everybody joins, they get, a really, really solid welcome. And that is including from before their official start date, all the way. Anybody that leaves, we wish them genuinely all the best. And it's a tough one because my view on it, right, is that if you have some sort of recipe for exactly what you ask, is that kind of like removing a little bit of the magic out of it? Dealing with people, we're dealing with emotions, we're dealing with feelings, okay? And anybody that looks at that and says, oh, I don't want to deal with feelings in the workplace, it's a modern day workplace. Everybody has feelings. Everybody has something. You've got to deal with it, okay? Yeah. I don't believe that any person is clonable, repeatable. So when you then take a number of people with different viewpoints, emotions, all of that stuff, and you put them into an office or a space, you're going to get something which is unique. I think for us, it comes down to the honesty piece and the vulnerability piece are probably two of the most important things. And making sure that above all else, everything is fair. Contracts are fair. Working hours are fair without micromanaging it. We have an office policy in terms of where people should work. But if somebody needs a 4-day week, somebody needs to work shorter, they work longer, they can. We're all adults. But it comes from a genuine place. How can that help the people, not something as a marketing spiel? Okay. I mean, the 4-day week thing died to death, didn't it? Because nobody was marketing anymore. We do it here. Why do we do it? Well, Lewis needs childcare for his child, so we do a 4-day week. That's helped him out massively, right? That's where it comes from. So I don't have a direct answer to it, but what I do know is that there's this click with everybody which is sat outside there. They understand. I've had meaningful conversations, not just with all of them at one-to-one, but at a group level. Being vulnerable in front of an individual versus a group, two very different things, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably just making sure that you're bringing the right people in. And I think that when you are defining the culture and you genuinely believe that it is an important part of your workplace, you will know kind of within a couple of minutes of meeting somebody, if not seconds. I think there's neuroscience done about that stuff somewhere, if they are going to be a good fit or not. The brave thing is actually going, okay, this person on paper has got all the skills. This person over here has got the mindset. And I've always had a saying, mindset over skill set. And I've stuck with that to this very, very day. So again, a little bit of a roundabout answer for you, but I do think there's an element of magic. I do think there's an element of mystery in there, but I always would pick mindset over skill set.
So this has given me a great opportunity to make an offer to you where when I get my hands on the newest deck that is coming out of the Riders and Elephants community, two of my fellow certified consultants, Lottie and Larissa, over in Australia and New Zealand, have literally just shipped out a copy of the Workplace Habits and Rituals deck to me. You will be the first person that I take you through, because Lovely. I heard in your answer, you do have habits and rituals. You just don't call them that right now. And what I'm learning about habits and rituals myself is you're absolutely right. There is a magic to this, but the magic has to be kept alive.
Yeah.
For however long you can keep it alive. And I'm thinking about, our friend Father Christmas.
I think that's an element of a leader's role, keep that magic alive.
To keep the magic alive, because culture is going to grow whether you tend to it or not. But the issue is the quality of the culture that you're growing, right? If you've ever left a dirty coffee cup somewhere for a little while, you go back and look at the cultures that are growing on that. Eesh. It's the habits and rituals that keep the culture as you intended it to be, not what it becomes because of other people. So as we bring our time together to a close, I've got one more question for you.
Yep.
This is the Culturevating Leader podcast. Yep. I have a view of what defines the essence of a cultivating leader. I'm going to ask every guest on my podcast, for you, without using the word culture or any derivatives of it, what defines the essence of a cultivating leader?
vulnerability, being approachable, being honest, and being fair. I think that's
Great.
what I'd say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Graeme, it has been a pleasure. I knew it would be to talk through some of these things. We didn't get the opportunity to go back and talk about the rebellious feeling you mentioned. So I'd love to bring this to a close with you sharing your thoughts around feeling rebellious as a leader of the creative industry or in the creative industry for our listeners.
We've touched on it a few times throughout this, the idea that it would be easy to use AI for a lot of output, but my view on it is very strong. I've been very clear, we do not use it for that purpose, where others do. So there's an element of, being rebellious around there. There's an element of being rebellious that, well, look, I can see that your organization over here has got a lovely Lavazza coffee machine and you've got some bean bags and stuff, but if your employees are all miserable, then what's the point? So it's not that we do that. We have a saying which is called "Stay classy, San Diego." Sometimes the best thing to do is to say nothing, but the best thing really is when the team and the clients say stuff. So we're being rebellious in that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Not too outspoken with it, but it's all good.
Thank you so much for being here, being episode 1, and being the incredible supporter and cheerleader that you are of the Culturevators. We definitely, and I can say this hand on my heart, would not be here without your and the team's input. So thank you, and thank you for being part of the podcast. And thank you, listeners, for listening. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time for another conversation with another cultivating leader. Thanks so much for listening to the Culturevating Leader podcast. If today's episode has sparked something in you, please share it, tag me, or leave a review. It really helps us to get to more leaders and help them discover the power of emotional culture. To learn more about how we help organisations to build a culture that aligns with their purpose, head to culturevator.co.uk or connect with me on LinkedIn. And remember, if you want your clients to feel X, then your people need to feel your Y. Until the next episode, let's keep culture at the heart of how we lead.